My name is Zara Williams. At least that is what they told me when I woke up in the private hospital room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than any medical facility I could imagine. The walls were painted a soft cream color. Fresh flowers sat on every surface, elegant arrangements of white roses and deep purple orchids that filled the air with their delicate scent. And the man sitting beside my bed wore a watch that probably cost more than most people made in a year, its gold face catching the afternoon sunlight that streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Miss Williams," the doctor said gently, leaning over me with a small penlight that he shined into my eyes one at a time. "Can you tell me what you remember?" "I remember nothing," I whispered, my throat raw and painful from the breathing tube they had just removed hours earlier. The words came out scratchy and weak. "Who am I? Where am I? What happened to me?" The doctor exchanged a look with the man in the suit, who had stood up the moment I spoke. His face showed something I could not quite read in my confused state. Relief? Fear? Hope? Perhaps all three mixed together in an expression of such raw emotion that it made my chest ache even though I did not know why. "You were in an accident," the doctor explained carefully, his voice taking on that overly gentle tone that medical professionals use when delivering difficult news. "A severe head trauma. You have been unconscious for 3 weeks. It is not uncommon for patients with your type of injury to experience temporary memory loss." "Temporary," I repeated, grasping at the word like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. "So I will remember?" "Eventually?" "Most patients do recover their memories eventually," the doctor said, but I heard the hesitation in his voice. "But I cannot make any promises about the timeline. It could be days, weeks, or even months. In some cases, certain memories may never fully return. I am sorry I cannot be more specific." "Or never," I heard the unspoken possibility hanging in the air between his carefully chosen words. The man in the suit moved closer to my bedside, and I instinctively shrank back against the pillows, my body reacting with fear, even though my mind could not tell me why I should be afraid. He noticed my reaction immediately and stopped, hurt flashing across his handsome features before he masked it with careful control, his face becoming an unreadable mask. "Zara," he said, and his voice was deep and rich, with just a hint of an accent I could not quite place. "Italian, maybe?" "My name is Dante Moretti. We were together before your accident. We were planning our future. We were going to be married." "Together?" I repeated slowly, studying his face as if I could force recognition through sheer willpower. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, with strong angular features and eyes so dark they were almost black. His hair was perfectly styled, swept back from his forehead. His suit was immaculate, clearly, custom-tailored to fit his tall, muscular frame. Everything about him screamed wealth and power and danger, and I felt absolutely nothing when I looked at him. No recognition, no spark of memory, no flutter of attraction or love or familiarity, just a blank space where something important should have been, like a missing piece in a puzzle. "I am sorry," I whispered, watching pain flash across his face again before he controlled it. "I do not know you. I do not remember you. I do not remember anything." "I understand," Dante said, his voice carefully controlled, but I could see his hands clenching into fists at his sides, the knuckles going white with tension. The doctors warned me this might happen. They prepared me for the possibility. But I am here, Zara. I am not going anywhere. We will get through this together, I promise you. Over the next few days, I learned the basic facts of my supposed life, information delivered in careful increments by doctors, nurses, social workers, and the man who claimed to be my fiancé. I was 27 years old. I worked as an art curator at a small but prestigious gallery in Manhattan. I had met Dante 6 months earlier, when he had come to view a private collection of Italian Renaissance paintings. We had fallen in love quickly and intensely, like people do in movies and romance novels. 3 months ago, he had proposed to me in Central Park at sunset. I had said yes without hesitation. 2 weeks before the accident that stole my memories, we had been planning our wedding, choosing flowers, tasting cakes, sending invitations, building a future together. "Look," Dante said one afternoon, about a week after I'd woken up, maybe the 5th or 6th time he had visited that day. He sat in the chair beside my hospital bed and pulled out his phone, scrolling through hundreds of photographs. "This is us at the gallery where we met. You were giving a private tour. This is our first official date at that little Italian restaurant in the village. This is the night I proposed. This is us at my mother's house for Sunday dinner. This is from the charity gala we attended last month. I stared at the images on the screen, trying desperately to find some spark of recognition, some fragment of memory. The woman in the photos was beautiful, with rich dark skin that glowed in the golden hour lighting, natural curls framing her face in an elegant style, and a smile that lit up her entire face and made her eyes sparkle. She wore elegant dresses in the formal photos and casual jeans and sweaters in others. In every single picture, she was looking at Dante like he hung the moon and stars just for her. That woman was me, but she was also a complete stranger. I do not remember any of this, I said softly, unable to tear my eyes away from that stranger who wore my face, but seemed to belong to an entirely different life. I do not remember you. I do not remember being happy like that. I do not remember loving someone that much. You will, Dante said firmly, but I heard the desperation beneath his certainty, the fear that maybe I would not remember, maybe this was permanent. We will make new memories until the old ones come back, and if they do not come back, we will make enough new ones that it will not matter. The doctors released me 2 weeks after I woke up, after countless tests and scans and evaluations by neurologists and psychiatrists and physical therapists. They gave me instructions for continued physical therapy, regular neurological checkups, and patience. Lots and lots of patience. They warned me not to push too hard to remember, that forcing memories could actually delay recovery. Where will I go? I asked the social worker who came to discuss my discharge plans and help me navigate this terrifying new reality. I do not have any memories. I do not know where I live. I do not even know if I have family or friends or a home to go to. You will come home with me, Dante said immediately. He had been present for every conversation, every doctor visit, every therapy session, sitting quietly in the corner unless I needed him. To our home. To the penthouse we share together. Our home, I repeated carefully, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. I studied his face, looking for any sign of dishonesty or manipulation, any hint that he might not be who he claimed to be. But all I saw was genuine concern, and something that looked a lot like love, deep and abiding and patient. How do I know I can trust you? I asked bluntly. How do I know you are who you say you are? How do I know this is not some elaborate scheme to take advantage of a vulnerable woman with no memories? It was a fair question. For all I knew, this man could be anyone. A stalker who had taken advantage of my vulnerable condition. A con artist after whatever money or property I might have. A dangerous criminal who saw an opportunity in my amnesia to control and manipulate me. I had only his word that we had been together, that I had loved him, that I had agreed to marry him. Dante did not look offended by my suspicion. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and extracted several cards and documents, laying them out on the hospital bed tray one by one, like he was presenting evidence in a court case. My driver's license, credit cards with both our names, even what looked like legal documents with official stamps and seals. This is my identification, he said calmly, pointing to each item. Here are the property documents for the penthouse where we live. Both our names are on the deed. You moved in 4 months ago. Here is the engagement announcement from the New York Times Society pages from 3 months ago. Here is a letter from your sister Maya, congratulating us on our engagement and saying how happy she is that you found someone who loves you so much. I have a sister, I asked, latching onto that detail with desperate hope. Maybe family would feel familiar, would trigger something in my blank mind. 2 sisters, Dante confirmed, Maya and Simone. They live in California with their families. They have been calling every single day since your accident, sometimes multiple times a day. They wanted to fly out immediately, but I told them to wait until you were ready for visitors, until you were stronger and more stable. I studied the documents carefully, looking for any sign of forgery or manipulation. But everything looked legitimate. The engagement photo showed that stranger with my face wearing a stunning diamond ring on her left hand, looking radiantly happy as she gazed at Dante. The property documents had official stamps. The letter from my supposed sister was written in flowing handwriting that looked genuine. Can I see the ring? I asked quietly, remembering the sparkle on that stranger's finger in the photograph. Dante's expression shuddered slightly, a flicker of something I could not read crossing his face. You were not wearing it during the accident. You had taken it off because you were having the setting adjusted. A prong had become loose and you were worried about losing the center stone. It is at home, safe in my desk drawer. I will show you when we get there. Something about his hesitation made me uneasy, a small voice in the back of my mind whispering warnings I could not quite articulate. But the doctors were encouraging me to go with him, The social worker had verified his identity and our relationship through multiple sources, and I had nowhere else to go. No memories meant no family I could recall, no friends I recognized, no home I could picture in my mind. "Okay," I said finally, making what felt like a leap of faith. "I will come with you, but I need you to understand something, Dante. I need time. I need space. I cannot pretend to feel things I do not remember feeling. I cannot be the woman in those photographs until I remember who she was." Relief washed over Dante's face so clearly that I almost felt guilty for making him worry, for putting conditions on something that should have been simple. "I understand completely. I will not push you, Zara. I just want you safe and home where you belong. Everything else can wait." The penthouse was exactly as luxurious as I had expected based on Dante's expensive clothes and obvious wealth. We arrived in a private car with a driver who nodded respectfully at Dante and helped me from the vehicle with careful courtesy. The building was one of those exclusive addresses on the Upper East Side, with a doorman who greeted Dante by name and welcomed me home with genuine warmth. The elevator required a special key to access the penthouse level. We rode up in silence, and I watched the numbers climb higher and higher until we reached the top floor. The doors opened directly into the apartment, no hallway or shared space, just straight into a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that probably cost more than most people's cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park the late afternoon, sun casting, golden light across the living room. Original artwork hung on cream-colored walls, pieces I somehow knew were valuable even though I could not remember ever seeing them before. Every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in a design magazine, all clean lines and expensive fabrics in neutral tones. And there was a whole wall of bookshelves in what appeared to be a study or library, filled with art history texts, exhibition catalogs, and novels with worn spines that suggested they had been read multiple times. "Your books," Dante said quietly, watching me examine the shelves with wide eyes. "You love to read about art history. You said understanding an artist's life helped you understand their work better, that you could see their pain and joy and passion reflected in every brushstroke." I ran my fingers along the spines, waiting for something to feel familiar, for some title to trigger a memory or emotion, but they were just books. Beautiful, expensive books that belonged to a stranger who apparently had excellent taste in literature. "Let me show you your room," Dante said, leading me down a hallway lined with more artwork. I looked at him in surprise. "My room? Not our room. I thought you said we lived here together." "We do." "We did." Dante's voice was carefully neutral, but I thought you would be more comfortable with your own space while you recover, until your memories return, and you feel ready for more intimacy. "Oh." I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment that I could not quite understand. "Thank you. That is very considerate." He opened a door and I stepped into a bedroom that took my breath away. The space felt right in a way nothing else had so far. The soft blue-gray walls were soothing. A comfortable reading chair sat by the window, positioned to catch the afternoon light. An antique vanity with an oval mirror stood against one wall, its surface scattered with jewelry boxes and perfume bottles. The bed was enormous, covered in soft white linens and what looked like 100 throw pillows in varying shades of blue and gray. I could imagine myself here, even if I could not remember actually being here. This space felt like it could belong to me in a way that the rest of the penthouse did not. "Thank you," I said quietly, turning to face Dante. "This was kind of you. Most men in your position would probably expect their fiancé to just pick up where things left off, would not be so understanding about the situation." "I want you to be comfortable," Dante replied simply. "I want you to feel safe. That is more important to me than anything else right now." Over the next several weeks, I tried to settle into a life I could not remember choosing. Dante gave me space but was always present, a constant, steady presence in the background of my days. He worked from home most days, taking calls in his study while I explored the penthouse and tried to piece together who I had been before the accident. I found my clothes in a walk-in closet that was bigger than some studio apartments, beautiful pieces in rich jewel tones that complemented my dark skin, emerald green silk blouses, deep purple cashmere sweaters, a stunning red dress that still had the tags on it, apparently purchased for an event we had never made it to. I found photographs tucked into drawers and displayed on shelves throughout the penthouse. Pictures of me with people I did not recognize. Friends, colleagues, family. All strangers wearing familiar faces and friendly smiles. And slowly I began to notice things that did not quite add up, small inconsistencies that nagged at the back of my mind. Dante's work, for instance. He took calls at all hours, often in rapid Italian, speaking in low, urgent tones that suggested the conversations were about more than simple business deals. Men in expensive suits would visit the penthouse, treating Dante with a deference that went beyond normal business relationships. They called him Mr. Moretti with a respect that bordered on fear, and there were times when he would disappear for hours without explanation, leaving early in the morning before I woke up or slipping out late at night after he thought I was asleep. He always came back with tension in his shoulders and darkness in his eyes, shadows that suggested whatever he had been doing weighed heavily on his conscience. "What do you do exactly?" I asked him one evening over dinner in the formal dining room. He had cooked, which surprised me. Homemade pasta with a sauce that smelled like heaven, paired with a wine that I somehow knew without being told was expensive and rare. Dante set down his fork carefully. Too carefully, like he was buying himself time to formulate an answer. "I have various business interests: real estate development, imports and exports, investment portfolios. Nothing you need to worry about while you focus on your recovery." "But I do worry," I pressed, not willing to let it drop this time. "Because you never give me details. You take mysterious calls at all hours. You have meetings with men who look like they would be more comfortable breaking kneecaps than discussing stock portfolios. And you avoid answering direct questions about your work. What are you hiding from me, Dante?" "Zara," his voice held a warning note that made me sit up straighter. "Your focus should be on recovering your memories, not on analyzing my business affairs. The stress could delay your healing." "Maybe my memories are tied to understanding who you really are," I countered. "Maybe I cannot remember because something does not feel right, because my subconscious is protecting me from a truth my conscious mind is not ready to handle. That is ridiculous." Dante stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You are imagining problems that do not exist. I have been nothing but patient and supportive while you recover." "You have," I agreed. "But that does not mean I should not ask questions. That does not mean I should blindly trust someone I cannot remember." "I need to make some calls," Dante said curtly, and left the dining room without another word. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in my unfamiliar bed in my supposedly familiar room and stared at the ceiling, trying to force memories to surface through sheer willpower. But there was nothing. Just emptiness where my life should have been, a blank slate that refused to be filled no matter how hard I tried. Around 2 a.m, I heard voices from somewhere else in the penthouse. Low, angry voices speaking in rapid Italian, arguing about something that sounded serious and dangerous. I slipped out of bed, pulling on a robe over my pajamas, and crept down the hallway toward the sound. The voices were coming from Dante's study. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack I could see him standing behind his desk with 3 other men. All of them wore suits despite the late hour. All of them looked dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with fashion and everything to do with violence barely contained. "The shipment was compromised," one of the men was saying in accented English. "The Federales found it at the port before our people could make the pickup. Someone tipped them off." "How much did we lose?" Dante asked, his voice cold and controlled in a way I had never heard before. This was not the gentle, patient man who had been taking care of me. This was someone else entirely, someone hard and dangerous. "2 million in product," the man replied. "Plus 3 of our men are in custody. They are being questioned as we speak." I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle my gasp. Product, custody, questioned. These were not the words of legitimate businessmen discussing a failed deal. These were the words of criminals discussing an operation that had gone wrong. "Handle it," Dante ordered. "Get our men the best lawyers. Make sure they understand the importance of silence. And find out who tipped off the feds. I want to know by tomorrow morning. Nobody undermines my operations and walks away." "What about the interrogations?" another man asked. "Should we be concerned about them talking?" "They know what happens to rats in our organization," Dante said flatly. "They have families to consider. They will keep their mouths shut or face consequences they will not survive." I backed away from the door carefully, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they would hear it. I made it back to my room and closed the door silently, then sat on the edge of the bed with my mind racing and my hands shaking. Dante was not just a businessman with various interests. He was a criminal, probably involved in drug smuggling based on that conversation. And if we had truly been together before my accident, that meant I had known. I had accepted it. I had agreed to marry him despite knowing what he was and what he did. Or had I known? Maybe that was why I could not remember. Maybe my mind was protecting me from the truth of what I had gotten involved with, blocking out memories that were too dangerous or disturbing to process. The next morning at breakfast, I confronted him. We sat at the kitchen island, the morning sun streaming through the windows and making everything look deceptively peaceful and normal. Dante was reading something on his tablet while sipping espresso. I had barely touched my coffee. "What kind of business are you really in, Dante?" I asked bluntly, not bothering with subtlety or easing into the conversation. He looked up from his tablet, and for a moment something dangerous flickered in those dark eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by careful neutrality. "Why do you ask?" "I heard you last night," I said. "The meeting in your study. The men talking about shipments and custody and paying people for silence. That is not the language of legitimate business deals." Dante set down his tablet slowly and deliberately. "You were eavesdropping." "I was investigating," I corrected, "because I am living with a man I do not remember, a man who claims we were engaged. And I'm starting to think there is a very good reason my mind does not want me to remember. Maybe my subconscious knows something my conscious thoughts do not." "And what do you think you have discovered?" Dante asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I think you are involved in something illegal. I think you are some kind of criminal, probably an organized crime based on the way those men treated you. And I think the woman I was before the accident either did not know or did not care. But I care now." Dante stood up, his full height imposing as he moved around the kitchen island toward me. I tensed, ready to run if necessary, but he stopped several feet away and just looked at me with an expression I could not read. Pain? Regret? Resignation? "You are right," he said finally. "I am not a legitimate businessman. My family has been involved in organized crime for 3 generations. My grandfather started building the organization in Sicily before immigrating to America. My father expanded operations throughout the Northeast, and I have continued that legacy. I am what people call a mafia boss, though I prefer to think of myself as a businessman operating in markets the government has deemed illegal. I run operations across the eastern seaboard. Imports, exports, protection services, loans, all of it technically illegal. All of it undeniably dangerous. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow, even though I had already suspected it after last night. And I knew this? Before the accident? I knew you were a criminal and I still agreed to marry you? "You knew everything," Dante said firmly. "I never lied to you, Zara. Not once. From our very first real conversation, I was completely honest about who I am and what I do, and you chose to be with me anyway. You chose love over safety. You chose me knowing exactly what you were getting into." "Why would I do that?" I whispered. "Why would I choose to be with a criminal? Why would I agree to marry someone involved in organized crime? That does not sound like a smart decision." "Because you loved me," Dante said, and his voice was raw with emotion. "And because I loved you. Because we understood each other in a way neither of us had ever experienced before. Because you saw past the violence and the danger to the man underneath. The man who reads poetry and cooks Italian food and donates anonymously to art programs in underfunded schools. You saw all of me, not just the parts that were easy to accept." "I do not see that man now," I said quietly. "I only see a stranger who might be lying to me about everything." "How do I know any of what you are telling me is true?" Dante's jaw clenched. "I have never lied to you. Not before your accident and not after. Everything I have told you is the truth. But if you need proof, I will give you proof." "Prove it then," I challenged. "Show me proof that we were together. Show me the engagement ring you said was being resized." For a long moment, Dante just stared at me. Then without a word, he turned and left the kitchen. I heard him moving through the penthouse, footsteps heavy on the hardwood floors, opening doors and drawers somewhere in the depths of his study. When he returned, he was carrying a small velvet box that looked old and well cared for, the kind of box that gets passed down through generations. He set it on the kitchen counter in front of me and opened it with careful reverence. Inside was the most beautiful ring I had ever seen. A large center diamond, at least 3 carats, surrounded by a ring of smaller sapphires that sparkled like captured starlight. The setting was platinum, elegant, and timeless. It was exactly the ring from the engagement photo he had shown me in the hospital. "This was my grandmother's ring," Dante said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "She left it to me when she died, with very specific instructions that I should give it only to the woman I intended to spend my life with. The woman who would be the mother of my children. The woman who would carry on our family legacy. I gave it to you 4 months ago in Central Park, on that bridge that overlooks the lake. It was late September and the leaves were just beginning to turn. The sunset painted everything gold. You cried when I asked you to marry you. You said yes before I even finished the question. I reached for the ring with trembling fingers. It was heavy and cool in my palm, beautiful and expensive and completely foreign to me despite the fact that I had apparently worn it every day for months. Put it on, Dante said softly. Maybe it will help trigger some memories. Sometimes physical sensations can unlock things that words and photographs cannot. I slid the ring onto my left hand with shaking fingers. It fit perfectly, settling into place like it belonged there, like it had been there before, like my finger had molded to its shape over months of wearing it. And then something happened that I was not expecting. Not a full memory, but a flash. A fragment. A feeling. I saw myself wearing this ring, standing in front of a mirror in this very penthouse, admiring the way it caught the light, feeling joy and excitement and love so intense it made my chest ache, feeling like I had finally found where I belonged after years of searching. The flash was gone as quickly as it came, leaving me dizzy and grasping the counter for support. Zara, Dante stepped closer immediately, his hands hovering near my arms but not quite touching, giving me space even in his concern. What is it? What did you remember? Talk to me. I remember being happy, I whispered, staring at the ring on my finger like it held all the answers to questions I had not even thought to ask yet. I remember loving this ring. I remember looking at it and feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. But I do not remember why. I do not remember you being the one who gave it to me. The disappointment in his eyes was crushing, visible despite his attempts to hide it behind a mask of patience. But he nodded and stepped back, giving me physical and emotional space. It is a start. Memory recovery is not linear, the doctors told us that. Sometimes it comes in fragments before the full picture emerges. This is progress, even if it does not feel like it yet. Over the following weeks, I started to recover small pieces of my past. Never full memories, but flashes. Fragments of sensation and emotion without the context that would make them meaningful. I would smell espresso brewing in the morning and suddenly feel warm and safe, like I was wrapped in someone's arms even though I stood alone in the kitchen. I would hear Italian opera playing from Dante's study and feel my eyes fill with tears for reasons I could not explain. I would see certain foods on restaurant menus and know instinctively that I loved them, even though I could not remember ever eating them before. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to see Dante differently. Not as a stranger, but as someone familiar. Someone important. Someone who mattered in ways I could not quite articulate, but felt deep in my bones. He was endlessly patient with me, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. He answered my questions about his work honestly, not hiding the darkness of his world, but not glorifying it either. He treated his criminal empire like what it was, a dangerous business that required difficult decisions and sometimes resulted in violence. He introduced me to his family, his mother Lucia, who welcomed me with tears and embraces and stories about the woman I had been. His sister Gianna, who treated me like we had always been friends. His nephew Antonio, who showed me drawings he claimed I had helped him make, though I had no memory of sitting with the child and coloring. You are so different from the others, Lucia told me one afternoon over coffee in the penthouse living room. The other women, Dante dated before you, they wanted the money and the status and the power. They liked being seen on his arm, at expensive restaurants and charity galas. But you challenged him. You made him think about his choices. You made him want to be better than he was. Though you never demanded he change who he fundamentally was. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that I had been someone strong enough to love a dangerous man without losing myself in his world. Someone who could stand beside a mafia boss and maintain her own identity and moral compass. One evening about 3 months after I woke up from my coma, Dante took me to the art gallery where I had supposedly worked. It was a small, elegant space in Soho, occupying the ground floor of a converted warehouse. The walls were white and clean, the lighting perfect for displaying art. Contemporary pieces by emerging artists filled the space, each one carefully chosen and beautifully displayed. The owner, a woman named Rachel, greeted me with tears streaming down her face and a hug so tight I could barely breathe. Oh, Zara, oh my God. I was so worried. When Dante called to tell me about the accident, I thought I would lose my mind. I am so glad you are okay. I am so glad you are here. I am sorry, I said gently when she finally released me from the embrace. I do not remember you. I do not remember working here. The doctors say I have amnesia from the head trauma. Rachel's face fell, disappointment and concern mixing in her expression, but she nodded and wiped her eyes. The doctors mentioned that might be the case. Well, let me show you around. Maybe something will jog your memory. You spent so much time here. This place was like your second home. She led me through the gallery with Dante following quietly behind us, explaining each piece, telling me stories about the artists and the shows we had curated together. Her voice was warm and enthusiastic as she described our work together, painting a picture of a partnership built on shared passion for art and for helping emerging artists find their voices. You have such a good eye, Rachel explained as we stopped in front of an abstract painting of a city street scene. You could look at an artist's portfolio and immediately know if they had something special or if they were just copying trends. You taught me so much about trusting my instincts. And slowly, as we walked through the gallery, I began to feel something. Not memories exactly, but a sense of rightness. This place felt like somewhere I belonged. The art spoke to me in ways I could not articulate but felt deeply. I found myself critiquing pieces in my head, noticing composition and color choices and the emotions they evoked. We stopped in front of a large abstract painting that dominated one wall. It was all bold reds and deep blacks with slashes of gold throughout, like lightning striking through a stormy sky. It was beautiful and violent and somehow heartbreaking all at once. This was your favorite piece in our current collection, Rachel said softly, watching my face carefully. You fought to include it in our spring show even though I thought it was too dark, too intense for our usual clientele. But you were right. It sold within the first week for 3 times our asking price to a collector from Chicago. I stared at the painting and felt something crack open inside my mind. Suddenly I was somewhere else, sometime else. I was standing in this exact spot, but Dante was beside me. His hand was warm in mine, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, and I was explaining to him why I loved this painting so much, my voice passionate as I gestured at the canvas. It is about passion, I heard my own voice saying, but not with my current careful tone. This was a different version of me, confident and animated and unafraid. Passion is not always gentle or safe. Sometimes it is violent and consuming and dangerous. Sometimes it destroys before it creates. But that does not make it any less beautiful or necessary or real. And Dante had looked at me with such intensity in that memory, his dark eyes capturing mine, and said in a voice rough with emotion, "That is what you are to me, Zara. Beautiful and consuming and worth any destruction that comes with loving you. You are my passion and my peace all at once." The memory faded as quickly as it had come, leaving me gasping and clutching Rachel's arm for support as the gallery spun around me. "Zara," Dante was there immediately, his hands on my shoulders, steadying me with his solid presence. "What happened? What did you remember? Are you okay?" I looked up at him and saw the man from my fragment of memory. The man who had looked at me with such raw intensity. The man I had loved enough to overlook his darkness and embrace the complicated reality of who he was. "Us," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I remembered us, just for a moment. We were here, standing in front of that painting, and you told me I was your passion and your peace. You told me I was beautiful and consuming and worth any destruction." Dante's eyes widened with something that looked like hope mixed with caution. "That was our 3rd date. You brought me here after hours to show me your favorite pieces in the collection. You told me about passion and destruction and how beauty often comes from pain. And I knew in that moment that I was going to fall in love with you. I knew you were different from anyone I had ever met. I fell in love with you too," I said, and even though I still could not remember all of it, could not access the full depth of our history, I knew it was true. I could feel the truth of it in my bones, in the way my heart raced when he looked at me, in the way I felt safe despite knowing how dangerous he was. After that breakthrough, memories started returning more frequently, still in fragments rather than complete narratives, still without the full context that would tie everything together, but enough that I began to piece together the story of who I had been. I remembered our first kiss, outside the gallery in the rain after our opening reception had run late. I remembered being soaked and laughing, and then suddenly his lips were on mine and the whole world disappeared. I remembered meeting his mother Lucia and being terrified and charmed in equal measure by her warmth and her fierce protectiveness of her son. I remembered learning about his work in detail, seeing the carefully organized system he had built, and struggling with the moral implications before deciding that love was more important than my idealistic principles. And slowly, piece by piece, I remembered the night he proposed. We had been walking through Central Park at sunset. It was late September and the leaves were just beginning to turn, painting the trees in shades of gold and red and orange, Dante had been quiet all day, almost nervous, which was so unlike his usual confidence that I kept asking if something was wrong. Finally, we had stopped on a small stone bridge that overlooked the lake. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber, making the water look like liquid light. And he had turned to me and taken both my hands in his dark eyes intense and vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. "Zara Williams," he said, and his voice was shaking slightly with emotion. "You have changed my life in ways I cannot fully explain or quantify. Before you, I was going through the motions of living. Building an empire but not building a life. Accumulating power but not finding purpose. You showed me the difference between existing and truly living. You showed me that power without love is empty, that success without someone to share it with means absolutely nothing." He dropped to one knee, and I remember my heart stopping, time seeming to freeze as he pulled out the velvet box containing his grandmother's ring. The box looked old and precious, and I knew without being told that this was a significant family heirloom being passed to me. "I am not an easy man to love," Dante continued, his voice raw with honesty. "My world is dangerous. My work is morally complicated at best, and I cannot promise you a normal, peaceful life, but I can promise you devotion that will never waver. I can promise you passion that will never fade. I can promise that I will protect you and cherish you and love you with everything I am for the rest of my days, however many those may be. Will you marry me, Zara? Will you choose this complicated, dangerous, passionate life with me?" And I had said yes without hesitation, without doubt, without any of the careful consideration that such a life-changing decision probably deserved, because I loved him with an intensity that both terrified and thrilled me, because being with him felt more right than any safe, sensible choice ever had, because I would rather have a short, passionate life with him than a long, boring one without him. The memory returned to me in full, vivid detail one night, about 4 months after the accident. Dante and I were having dinner at the penthouse, just a simple meal of pasta and salad that he had prepared. He was telling me about his day, about a meeting with his accountants and some property acquisitions he was considering. Normal, domestic conversation that felt increasingly comfortable as the weeks passed. And suddenly, I could see that moment on the bridge as clearly as if it were happening again right in front of me. The golden light, the nervous hope in his eyes, the weight of the ring as he slid it onto my finger, the overwhelming certainty that I was making the right choice even if it was not the safe choice. I gasped, my fork clattering to my plate with a sharp sound that made Dante look up immediately, concern flooding his features. "What is wrong?" he asked, already half out of his chair. "Are you in pain? Should I call your doctor?" "I remember," I whispered, staring at him with tears streaming down my face. "The proposal? The bridge? The way the sun turned your eyes the color of honey. I remember saying yes without hesitation. I remember knowing I was making a dangerous choice and not caring even a little bit because I loved you too much to choose safety over passion." Dante went very still, his entire body rigid with tension. "You remember the proposal? All of it?" "Not everything about us," I clarified, "but more than before. I remember falling in love with you over weeks and months. I remember choosing you despite knowing what you were, maybe partly because of what you were. I remember feeling like I had finally found where I belonged after years of feeling lost." He stood up so abruptly his chair nearly toppled backward, then moved around the table and pulled me into his arms. For a long moment he just held me, his face buried in my hair, and I felt him shaking with emotion he was trying to contain. "I thought I had lost you," he whispered against my hair, his voice breaking. "Not just your memories, but you, the essence of who you were. The woman who looked at me and saw someone worth loving despite everything I have done, everyone I have hurt, all the darkness I carry." "You have not lost me," I said, wrapping my arms around him and holding on tight. "I am still here. I am still me. I am still choosing you, Dante. Every single day I am choosing you." He pulled back just enough to look at me, his hands cupping my face with such gentleness it made my heart ache. "Do you really mean that? Even knowing everything you know now about my world? Even understanding the full extent of the danger and moral complexity? Especially understanding those things?" I replied firmly. "Because I remember now that I never loved you despite the darkness. I loved you including the darkness, maybe even partly because of it. The whole complicated, dangerous, passionate reality of who you are." Dante kissed me then, and it felt both familiar and brand new all at once. Like coming home to a place I had never left and embarking on an adventure I had always been meant to take. I kissed him back with everything I had, All the love I remembered and all the love I was still discovering, as my memories continued to return in pieces. That night, I did not sleep in my separate room. I stayed with Dante in the master bedroom that was supposed to have been ours all along, in the bed we were meant to have shared as a couple planning their future together. We talked until dawn, lying tangled together in soft sheets, filling in the gaps in my memories with his recollections. He told me stories about our time together that I could not yet remember, about fights we had that always ended with passionate reconciliations, about vacations we took to his family's villa in Sicily, about the way I had challenged him to be better, to use his power and resources for good alongside the necessary evil of his business operations. "You made me want to build something that would last beyond me," he said as the sun rose over Central Park, painting our bedroom in shades of pink and gold. "You made me think about legacy and what I wanted to leave behind." We started talking about having children, about raising them to understand both sides of our world, the beauty and the danger, the privilege and the responsibility. "I want that too," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I want a future with you. I want to build something beautiful together, even if it is built on a complicated foundation." Over the next several months, I continued to recover more and more of my past. Not all of it. Some memories remained stubbornly out of reach no matter how hard I tried to access them, but enough that I could piece together a complete picture of who I'd been and why I had made the choices I made. I returned to work at the gallery part-time, starting slowly with just a few hours a week and gradually building up as my confidence grew. Rachel was patient and supportive, reintroducing me to artists and collectors I had known before, helping me rebuild professional relationships I could not remember forming the first time. And gradually I started to feel like myself again. Not the exact same person I had been before the accident, because the experience of losing everything and having to choose it all over again had changed me fundamentally, but a version of myself that felt authentic and whole. 6 months after waking up from my coma, Dante and I had a very serious conversation about our future. We were sitting on the balcony of the penthouse watching the sunset over Central Park when he reached over and took my hand in his. "I want you to know something," he said quietly, his thumb tracing circles on my palm in a gesture that had become familiar and comforting. "I do not expect you to honor the commitment you made before your accident. Your amnesia gave you a fresh start, a clean slate, a chance to choose a different path, if you want to. Walk away from me and my world, I will understand. I will help you build a new life somewhere safe, far away from all of this." I turned to look at him, this complicated man I had chosen to love. "You are giving me an out. After everything, you are willing to let me go. I am giving you a choice," he clarified. "A real one, made with full knowledge and without the gradual acclimation you had before. Before your accident, you fell into this life gradually. You learned about my world, piece by piece, adjusting slowly to each new revelation. But you woke up and had everything dumped on you at once. That is different. If you want to leave, I will not stop you. I will not try to convince you to stay. I love you enough to want what is best for you, even if that means losing you." I took his hand in both of mine, feeling the weight of the engagement ring I had reclaimed weeks earlier, the ring that had belonged to his grandmother and now belonged to me. "Before my accident, I chose you, knowing exactly who you were, and I have chosen you again now, knowing even more about your world and the danger that comes with it. That is not an accident or a fluke or a mistake. That is a conscious, deliberate, fully informed decision. Zara," there was so much emotion in the way he said my name, like it was a prayer and a promise all at once. "I am not going anywhere," I continued firmly. "I love you. Not just because I remember loving you before, though those memories are precious to me, but because I have fallen in love with you all over again. The you who sat beside my hospital bed every single day. The you who gave me space when I needed it, even though it clearly hurt you. The you who answered my difficult questions honestly, even when the truth made you look dangerous and complicated. That is the man I am choosing, with full awareness of what that choice means." Dante pulled me into his lap, his arms wrapping around me with desperate intensity. "I do not deserve you. I have never deserved you." "Probably not," I agreed with a small laugh that made him smile despite the tears I could see in his eyes. "But you are stuck with me anyway, for better or worse, in safety and in danger, with full memories or with gaps that may never fill. I choose you, Dante Moretti." We were married 3 months later in a small, intimate ceremony, with only close family and friends present. The wedding took place in a private garden that belonged to one of Dante's legitimate business contacts, a sprawling estate just outside the city with views of rolling hills and autumn foliage in full glory. I wore a simple white dress, elegant and understated, with lace sleeves that ended at my wrists, and a flowing skirt that moved like water when I walked. My hair was styled in natural curls that framed my face. Dante's mother had given me a family heirloom, a necklace of pearls that had belonged to his grandmother, to wear as my something old. Dante wore a perfectly tailored suit in charcoal gray that made his dark eyes look even more intense, and when I walked down the makeshift aisle between rows of white chairs, his expression was one of such profound love and relief that it took my breath away. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. Dante promised to love and protect me for the rest of his life, to build a future worthy of us both, to be honest even when the truth was difficult. I promised to stand beside him through danger and difficulty, to love him including all his complications, to build something beautiful together out of all the broken pieces we had both brought to this relationship. And when the officiant pronounced us married and Dante kissed me, I tasted salt from tears I had not realized I was crying. Tears of joy and relief and gratitude that I had been given a second chance to choose this man, this life, this complicated and passionate future. The reception was elegant and intimate, with tables set up under string lights in the garden as the sun set and stars began to emerge. Dante's family toasted us in Italian. My sisters, who had flown in from California, cried and hugged me and told me they were happy I'd found someone who loved me so completely. "Your first wedding," my sister Maya said during a quiet moment while we stood together watching Dante dance with his mother, "was to that terrible man who tried to control everything you did. This feels so different. Yes, Dante is dangerous and his world is complicated, but he actually sees you. He respects you. He loves you for who you are, not who he wants to mold you into being." I had not known I had been married before. That was one of the memories that had not yet returned. "Wait, I was married before? You do not remember Daniel?" Maya looked at me with concern. "You were married for 2 years in your early 20s. He was emotionally abusive, controlled your finances, isolated you from friends. When you finally left him, you swore you would never let anyone have that kind of power over you again. But I let Dante have power over me," I said slowly, processing this new information about my past. "No," Maya corrected gently. "You gave Dante your trust. That is different. He has power in his world, yes, but not over you. You make your own choices. You maintain your own identity. That is what love should look like, and I'm so happy you found it, even if the circumstances are unconventional." My memories never fully returned. Even years later, there were still gaps and blank spaces where significant moments should have been. But I made peace with that incompleteness, because the truth is that memory is not what defines us or our relationships. Choice is what defines us. And I chose Dante every single day, consciously and deliberately. 1 year after my accident, on the anniversary of the day I woke up not knowing who I was, Dante gave me a special gift. It was carefully wrapped in silver paper with a white ribbon, and when I opened it, I found myself staring at the abstract painting from the gallery, the violent, beautiful piece that had triggered my first real memory of us together. "You bought it?" I asked in wonder, running my fingers along the frame. "Rachel said it sold to a collector in Chicago." "I was the collector in Chicago," Dante admitted with a slight smile. "I bought it the day after that breakthrough moment because I knew it was important to you. Rachel kept it in storage until I was ready to give it to you, waiting for the right moment. We hung it in our bedroom where we could see it every morning when we woke up, a reminder of passion and destruction and beauty emerging from pain, a symbol of everything we had been through and everything we had built together." 2 years after my accident, Dante's organization underwent significant changes. He began the process of legitimizing many of his business operations, moving away from the most dangerous and illegal activities toward ventures that existed in gray areas rather than outright criminal enterprises. "I want to build something our children can inherit without shame," he explained one night as we reviewed financial documents and business proposals. "I want them to know where they came from, to understand their family history, but I also want them to have choices we did not have." 3 years after the accident, we started seriously discussing having children. It was a complicated conversation full of difficult questions about raising children in our unique situation. Would it be fair to them? How would we explain their father's work? What kind of life could we provide? But we both wanted a family desperately. We both wanted to create something good and pure and hopeful from the complicated reality of our lives. Our daughter Sophia was born on a snowy January evening 4 years after the accident that had stolen my memories. She arrived 3 weeks early, surprising us both, with Dante barely making it to the hospital in time after being caught in traffic from a business meeting. She had Dante's dark eyes and my brown skin and the most beautiful head of curly hair I had ever seen. When the nurses placed her in my arms for the first time, I felt love so intense it was almost painful. This tiny, perfect person was ours, our creation, our hope for the future. Dante held her with a reverence that brought tears to my eyes, this man who commanded respect through fear in his business world, being impossibly gentle with the tiny life we had created together. "She is perfect," he whispered, staring at our daughter like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. "She is everything." "She is ours," I agreed. "Our transformation. Our proof that something beautiful can grow from complicated soil." Lucia, Dante's mother, cried when she first held her granddaughter. "She looks like my mother," she said in Italian, her voice thick with emotion. "The same eyes, the same chin. This is a blessing, a connection to ancestors long gone but never forgotten." Raising Sophia brought new challenges and new joys. We had to figure out how to maintain security without making her feel trapped, how to give her a normal childhood while being realistic about the unusual nature of her family, how to teach her about her heritage, both the Italian traditions and the complicated history of her father's organization. But we did it together, making decisions as partners, compromising when necessary, standing firm on the things that mattered most. When Sophia was 2, we had our son Marco. He had my smile and Dante's intensity and a personality that made itself known from his very first days. Where Sophia was thoughtful and observant, Marco was bold and adventurous, always testing boundaries and pushing limits. "You were like that as a child," Lucia told Dante with a knowing smile, "always getting into trouble, always questioning everything. Your father used to say you would either take over the world or destroy it, and there would be no in between." Now, 7 years after the day I woke up not knowing who I was, I can honestly say I am happy. Truly, deeply, completely happy, in a way I'm not sure I was, even before the accident, based on the memories that have returned. I never recovered all my memories. There are still blank spaces in my past, moments and experiences lost to time and trauma that may never return, but I have made peace with that incompleteness, because those missing memories do not define who I am now or the life I have built. Every morning I wake up beside Dante and see him watching me with the same intensity he showed that first day in the hospital. Every morning I check on our children, sleeping peacefully in their rooms, decorated with art and books and evidence of their unique personalities. Every morning I choose to be here, to be present, to embrace this life I almost lost and then consciously chose to reclaim. The engagement ring that once belonged to Dante's grandmother still sits on my left hand where it belongs, now paired with a simple wedding band. The painting of passion and destruction still hangs in our bedroom where we can see it every day, a constant reminder of what we survived and what we built together. And in our study, carefully preserved in a shadow box, are the clothes I was wearing the day of my accident, kept as a reminder of how quickly everything can change and how precious each moment truly is. Whether those missing memories ever fully return or not, I know who I am. I am Zara Moretti, formerly Williams. I am an art curator who has built a respected career helping emerging artists find their voices. I am a wife to a complicated man who loves me with unwavering devotion. I am a mother to 2 beautiful children who represent our hope for the future. I am a woman who fell in love with the same dangerous man twice and chose him both times with full awareness of what that choice entailed. And if that is not a love story worth remembering, I genuinely do not know what is. Dante often says I am the bravest person he knows, choosing his dangerous world with full knowledge of what it means, without the gradual acclimation most people would need. But he is wrong about that. There is no bravery required in loving him. Loving him is the easiest, most natural thing I have ever done. It feels as inevitable as breathing. What required true bravery was trusting myself enough to make that choice again when I could not remember making it the first time. Trusting that the woman I had been before the accident knew what she was doing when she said yes to this complicated, dangerous, beautiful life. Trusting that love could be real and valid even when built on the foundation of forgotten memories. And I was right to trust her, to trust that earlier version of myself. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was choosing love over safety, passion over peace, a life fully lived over mere comfortable existence. I am so grateful to her for making that choice. And I'm grateful to the accident that forced me to make it again with fresh eyes and full awareness, because now I know beyond any doubt that this is where I belong, that this is who I am meant to be, that this is the life I was meant to live. By Dante's side, in his arms, in his dangerous, passionate, complicated world. With his grandmother's ring on my finger and our children playing at our feet and memories both recovered and newly made, filling every moment of every day. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to fall in love with the same person twice? To lose everything and then consciously choose to build it all back again? I do not have to wonder. I lived it. And I would not change a single moment of the journey, even the forgetting, especially the forgetting, because it taught me that what we have is not based on shared history or accumulated memories. As important as those things are, it is based on choice, on daily commitment, on love strong enough to survive anything, even the complete loss of the past. When people ask me about our love story, they expect me to talk about the romance of our first meeting or the drama of my accident and recovery. But the real love story, the part that matters most, is simpler and more profound than that. It is in the quiet moments. Dante making me coffee exactly how I like it, even on his busiest mornings. Me understanding when he needs to handle something dangerous and trusting him to come home safe. Our children laughing at the dinner table as we share stories about our days. The way we can communicate with just a look after all these years together. It is in the difficult moments. Making hard decisions about his business and its impact on our family, navigating the complicated morality of our situation, protecting our children from threats while giving them as normal a childhood as possible, never lying to each other even when the truth is painful. It is in the passionate moments. The way he still looks at me like I am the most beautiful woman he has ever seen. The intensity that never faded, not after marriage, not after children, not after the complications of real life settled in. The knowledge that we chose each other consciously and continue choosing each other every single day. Dante proposed to me twice. Once before I knew him, when I was a different version of myself with different memories and different perspectives. And once after, when he showed me the ring and told me our story, and let me decide for myself if I wanted to be part of it again. I said yes both times. That is all that matters in the end. The yes. The choice. The commitment to build a life together no matter what obstacles stand in the way. Memory loss, danger, moral complexity, the disapproval of some who think I should have walked away. None of it matters compared to the simple truth that we belong together, that we chose each other not once but twice, that our love was strong enough to survive even the loss of memory itself. Sometimes late at night when I cannot sleep, I stand at the window of our bedroom and look out over the city. I think about the woman I was before the accident, the woman whose memories I have only partially recovered. I wonder what she would think of the life we have built, whether she would be proud of the choices we have made. And then Dante wakes up and comes to stand behind me, wrapping his arms around me and resting his chin on my shoulder. And I know that she would be proud, because this is what she wanted. This is what she chose. This is the life she was willing to risk everything for. So this is our story. The story of how I lost everything and found it again. How I forgot love and rediscovered it. How I married the same man twice and meant it more the second time because I knew exactly what I was choosing. How we built a family and a future from the fragments of a past I could not fully remember. If you have ever doubted whether love can survive anything, learn from our story. If you have ever wondered whether second chances truly exist, know with certainty that they do. If you have ever questioned whether fighting for what you want is worth the struggle, let me tell you with absolute conviction that it is. Every single time. Without hesitation, without doubt, without reservation. Choose love, choose passion, choose the life that makes you feel most alive, even if it is complicated and dangerous and socially unacceptable, especially if it is those things. Because the best stories, the ones worth living and remembering and passing down to your children, are never simple. They are messy and complex and sometimes painful, but they are real. And that reality, that authentic, honest, complicated truth, is worth everything. My name is Zara Moretti. I am the woman who fell in love with an Italian mafia boss. I lost my memories and had to fall in love with him all over again. And I would do it 1,000 more times if that is what it took to have what we have built together. This is our story, our truth, our proof that love conquers everything, even amnesia, even lost memories, even the darkest complications life can throw at you. And I'm so deeply, profoundly grateful that I get to live it every single day. The ring on my finger represents more than just an engagement or a marriage. It represents choice. It represents choosing love twice. It represents a man patient enough to wait for me to remember and brave enough to let me choose freely, even if that choice might be to walk away. When Dante showed me this ring in the hospital, when he opened that velvet box and let me see his grandmother's legacy, he was not just showing me jewelry. He was showing me proof of our past, evidence that what we had was real and valuable and worth fighting to reclaim. And every day that I wear this ring, I am making that choice again. I am choosing him. I am choosing us. I am choosing this complicated, passionate, dangerous, beautiful life we have built together. Our children will grow up knowing their father's history. They will understand that their family has a complicated past, that their father made difficult choices in a world where there are rarely easy answers. But they will also grow up knowing that they are loved beyond measure, that their parents chose each other consciously and built a family based on honesty and commitment and unshakable devotion. Sophia already asked questions about what Daddy does for work. She is smart and observant, and she notices things that many adults might miss. We answer her honestly in age-appropriate ways, never lying but not overwhelming her with details she is not ready to process. Daddy helps people solve problems, I told her recently when she asked directly. Sometimes those problems are complicated and require difficult solutions, but he always tries to be fair and to protect people who cannot protect themselves. Is Daddy a good man? She asked, her dark eyes so much like his studying my face carefully. I thought about that question, about the complexity of defining good and bad in a world that is rarely black and white. Your daddy is a man who tries to do right by the people he cares about. He makes hard choices in difficult situations. He is not perfect, but he is good to us and good to the people who depend on him. That is what matters most. She seemed satisfied with that answer, and I hope that as she grows older, she will understand the nuance of the life we have chosen, that she will see her father not as a simple villain or hero, but as a complex human being trying to navigate a complicated world with as much integrity as that world allows. Marco is still too young for such questions, but his time will come, and when it does, we will answer him honestly as well. We will never lie to our children about who their father is or what he does. We will give them the truth and trust them to process it in their own time and their own way. This is what I have learned from losing my memory and choosing Dante again. Truth matters. Honesty matters. Making conscious choices rather than simply accepting what you are told matters more than almost anything else. I could have chosen differently when I woke up in that hospital with no memories. I could have walked away from Dante and his dangerous world. I could have started fresh somewhere else, built a safe, conventional life with someone uncomplicated. But I did not make that choice. I chose to stay. I chose to learn who I had been. I chose to fall in love again with the same complicated man. And that choice has made all the difference, because now I know with absolute certainty that this is where I belong. Not because I stumbled into it blindly, but because I chose it with open eyes and full awareness. That certainty, that conscious decision, makes everything we face together easier to bear. When dangers arise, and they do in Dante's world, I face them knowing that I chose this. When moral dilemmas present themselves, and they frequently do, I navigate them knowing that I decided to be part of this world. That ownership, that acceptance of responsibility for my choice, gives me strength I might not have had otherwise. So to anyone reading our story, to anyone wondering if love is worth the complications and dangers and difficult choices, I say this with complete conviction. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Love is worth everything. Real love, the kind that sees all of someone's complications and chooses them anyway, is worth any price, worth any danger, worth any sacrifice, but only if it is a conscious choice, only if you know what you are getting into and choose it anyway, only if you own your decision and commit to it fully. That is what I did. That is what we do every single day. We choose each other. We choose this life. We choose to build something beautiful from complicated materials. And that is why our love story, unconventional and morally complex as it is, works. Because it is built on choice and truth and unwavering commitment rather than on fantasy or ignorance or passive acceptance. When I look at my children, I see our future. When I look at Dante, I see my partner in building that future. When I look at myself in the mirror, I see a woman who knows who she is and what she wants and has fought to claim it. That woman is not the same as the one who existed before my accident. She is stronger in some ways, having had to consciously choose rather than simply accept. She is more certain, having tested her convictions and found them solid. She is more grateful, knowing how easily everything can be lost, and how precious it is to have it back. The accident that stole my memories was traumatic and painful and difficult, but it also gave me a gift I could not have received any other way. It gave me the chance to choose my life with full awareness rather than simply living the life I had fallen into. And I chose this. I chose him. I chose us. Every single day I wake up and make that choice again, and every single day it feels like the right choice. The only choice. The choice I was always meant to make, even if I had to make it twice to be certain. This is our story. This is our truth. This is proof that love can survive anything, even the complete loss of memory, if it is real and strong and built on conscious choice rather than accident or convenience. I am Zara Moretti. I fell in love with a mafia boss twice, and I would do it again without hesitation if given the chance, because some love stories are worth remembering, and ours is worth living every single day for the rest of our lives. Word count on 1,347 words. YouTube description. When Zara Williams wakes up from a 3-week coma with no memories of her past, the first person she sees is a stranger with dark eyes and an expensive suit who claims they were engaged. Dante Moretti insists they were planning their wedding before the accident that stole her memories, but Zara cannot remember him, their relationship, or why she would have agreed to marry a man she quickly discovers is an Italian mafia boss. As fragments of memory slowly return, Zara must piece together who she was and decide if she wants to be that woman again. She discovers she fell in love with Dante knowing exactly who he was and what he did. But now, with no memories to guide her, she must choose him again with full knowledge of his dangerous world. This is a story about second chances, choosing love twice, and discovering that real love is not about remembering the past, but choosing the future. It is about a woman brave enough to fall in love with the same dangerous man twice, and a man devoted enough to earn that love both times. Can love survive the loss of memory? Can you choose the same person twice and mean it more the second time? Watch this emotional journey of rediscovery, transformation, and the kind of love that transcends even the loss of the past. Hook line. She forgot everything, including him. So he showed her the ring and proved their love was worth choosing twice. 5 years after my accident, we hosted a dinner party at the penthouse to celebrate the opening of a new wing at the gallery where I work. It was a small gathering of close friends, family, and colleagues, the kind of intimate event I had grown to love over the years. Rachel was there with her husband telling stories about recent acquisitions and upcoming exhibitions. My sisters had flown in from California with their families, filling the penthouse with the sound of children playing and adults laughing. Dante's mother, Lucia, sat in the corner with my mother, the two of them having formed an unlikely friendship over shared grandchildren and mutual love for their children. And Dante moved through the gathering with ease, playing the perfect host, making sure everyone had food and drink, engaging in conversations about art and family and life. To anyone watching, we looked like a perfectly normal, successful couple hosting friends and family. Only a few people in that room knew the full truth of what Dante did for a living. Only a handful understood the complicated reality beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. But those who knew accepted it because they understood that the world is rarely as simple as we would like it to be. As I watched Dante laugh at something my nephew said, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. Gratitude for surviving the accident. Gratitude for recovering enough memories to understand who I had been. Gratitude for the chance to choose this life consciously rather than simply stumbling into it. "You look happy," Rachel said, coming to stand beside me with a glass of wine. "Really, truly happy. I'm so glad you found your way back to yourself after everything." "I found my way back to him," I corrected gently. And in doing that, I found my way back to myself. The two were always connected, I just did not understand that, until I lost everything and had to choose it all again. That night, after everyone had left and our children were asleep in their rooms, Dante and I stood on the balcony looking out over the city. The lights of Manhattan spread out before us like a blanket of stars, beautiful and vast and full of possibility. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly. "Choosing me? Building this life with me? Taking on all the complications that came with my amnesia?" Dante turned to me with such intensity in his dark eyes that it took my breath away even after all these years together. "Never. Not for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Zara, with memories or without them, before the accident or after it. You are everything I never knew I needed and everything I will always want. Even knowing I may never fully remember everything we shared before, even knowing that," he confirmed. "Because what we have now is built on something stronger than memory. It is built on conscious choice, on daily commitment, on love that has been tested and proven unbreakable. I would not trade that for all the memories in the world. I leaned into him, feeling his arms wrap around me with familiar warmth. I love you, Dante Moretti. I loved you before, even though I cannot fully remember it. I love you now with everything I am. And I will love you for every day we have left together. And I love you, tesoro mio, he whispered into my hair. My treasure. My heart. The woman who chose me twice and made me believe in second chances. That night, as I fell asleep in our bed with Dante's arm around me, and the painting of passion and destruction visible in the moonlight streaming through our windows, I thought about how strange and beautiful life can be. I had lost everything in that accident. My memories, my sense of self, my understanding of who I was and what I wanted. But in losing everything, I had gained something invaluable. I had gained the certainty that comes from conscious choice, the strength that comes from testing your convictions and finding them solid, the peace that comes from knowing exactly why you are where you are. My love for Dante was no longer something I had fallen into blindly. It was something I had chosen with open eyes and full awareness. And that made all the difference in the world. 6 years after the accident, on a sunny afternoon in late spring, I finally recovered a memory I had been searching for since the day I woke up. It was not triggered by anything dramatic. I was simply sitting in the gallery during a quiet moment, looking at a painting by a new artist we were considering for our summer show, and suddenly I was somewhere else. I was standing in this exact spot on the day I first met Dante. He had come to see a private collection, and I had been assigned to give him a personal tour. I remembered feeling nervous because I knew who he was, knew his reputation, knew the rumors about his family's business, but then he had asked a question about one of the Renaissance paintings, a question so insightful and thoughtful that it revealed a depth of knowledge I had not expected. And we had spent 2 hours walking through the gallery, discussing art and history and beauty and meaning. By the time the tour ended, I was fascinated by him, not despite his dangerous reputation, but including it as part of his complicated whole. That is when I fell in love with him, I realized, as the memory played out in vivid detail. Not later when he asked me on a date, or when he proposed, or during any of the dramatic moments I had managed to remember in fragments. I fell in love with him in that first conversation when he showed me that he was more than his reputation, more than his family's legacy, more than the dangerous world he inhabited. I called Dante immediately, my hands shaking as I held the phone. I remember, I said as soon as he answered. I remember the day we met. I remember falling in love with you during that first tour of the gallery. I remember everything about that day. His sharp intake of breath told me how much this meant to him. Tell me, he said. Tell me everything you remember. So I did. I told him about his thoughtful questions and my initial nervousness and the way the afternoon sunlight had fallen through the gallery windows. I told him about the moment I realized he was not just another wealthy collector looking to add prestigious pieces to his collection, but someone who genuinely loved and understood art. I told him about the way my heart had raced when he asked if he could take me to dinner to continue our conversation. That was the moment, I said softly. That was when I knew you were going to change my life. I could not have predicted how dramatically things would change or the journey we would take to get here. But I knew even then that you were someone special, someone worth the complications that would inevitably come. You changed my life too, Dante said, his voice thick with emotion. You saw past everything everyone else saw and looked at the person underneath. You made me want to be better than I was, to build something more than just an empire of fear and control. Everything good in my life now traces back to that afternoon in the gallery. 7 years after the accident, I can say with complete honesty that my life is fuller and richer than I ever imagined possible. Not despite the complications and dangers, but including them as part of the complete picture. My work at the gallery has flourished. I have developed a reputation for discovering emerging artists who go on to significant success, and I have used that reputation to create opportunities for artists from underrepresented communities who might not otherwise get attention from the art world establishment. Dante's business has continued to evolve toward more legitimate operations, though the transition is slow and complicated by decades of tradition and expectation. He still operates in gray areas, still makes decisions that would trouble people with simpler moral frameworks. But he has used his power and resources to protect vulnerable people in his territory, to prevent violence whenever possible, to build something his children can inherit without shame. Our children are thriving. Sophia is thoughtful and creative, showing signs of the same love for art that I have. Marco is bold and clever with a natural leadership ability that reminds everyone of his father. They are growing up knowing both privilege and responsibility, understanding that their family's wealth and influence come with obligations to use those things for good. And Dante and I are stronger than ever. Our love has been tested by amnesia, by moral complexity, by the normal struggles of marriage and parenthood and building a life together. And it has survived all of it, grown deeper and richer with each challenge we have faced and overcome together. This is what I have learned from falling in love with the same man twice. Love is not about perfect circumstances or easy choices. It is about seeing someone completely, understanding all their complications, and choosing them anyway. It is about building something beautiful from imperfect materials. It is about commitment that survives memory loss and danger and all the difficulties life inevitably brings. My name is Zara Moretti, and this is my story. The story of how I lost everything and found it again. The story of how I chose love twice and meant it more the second time. The story of how we built a family and a future from fragments of a forgotten past. And I would not change a single moment of the journey that brought us here. Not the accident that stole my memories. Not the fear and confusion of waking up in a hospital not knowing who I was. Not the gradual rediscovery of a life I could not remember choosing. Not the moment I learned that the man who claimed to love me was a mafia boss. Not the choice to stay and learn more rather than running away to safety. Not any of it, because all of those moments, all of those choices, all of those challenges led me to where I am now. Standing on our balcony with Dante beside me and our children sleeping safely in their rooms and a future full of possibilities stretching out before us, I am exactly where I'm meant to be. With exactly who I'm meant to be with, living exactly the life I was meant to live. And I know that with absolute certainty because I chose it. Not once, but twice. Not blindly, but with open eyes and full awareness. That is the gift my amnesia gave me. The gift of conscious choice. The gift of certainty born from testing my convictions and finding them unshakable. The gift of knowing beyond any doubt that this is my place. This is my person. This is my life. So if you are reading this and wondering if real love exists, if second chances are possible, if choosing the complicated path over the easy one is worth it, let me tell you with complete conviction, yes. Absolutely yes. Real love does exist. It is messy and complicated and sometimes dangerous, but it is worth everything. Second chances are real. Sometimes you get the opportunity to choose your life again with fresh eyes and fuller understanding. And choosing the complicated path, the one that challenges you and changes you and makes you grow, is always worth it if you are choosing it for the right reasons. My reason was Dante. My reason was the life we could build together. My reason was love, strong enough to survive anything, even the loss of memory itself. And 7 years later, that reason still holds true, still guides my choices, still makes every challenge worth facing. This is our love story. Unconventional, complicated, built on a foundation of conscious choice rather than simple happenstance. And it is the most beautiful story I could ever hope to live.